Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Connecting with Kim here on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. You can catch the audio of our show on Sun Radio 96.3 FM in Sun City Center and on your favorite streaming platform. I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, the Spring of Tampa Bay, because they provide all the clothing and jewelry I wear on my show that makes me look great every week from the Spring Boutique located at the corner of Swan and Henderson. And if you've not been there, please go and visit their shop and support them, because all the net proceeds from the thrift store on Willow and the shop at Swan and Henderson go to support their mission of providing sanctuary and services to survivors of domestic violence. And they've been doing it since 1977. They know what they're doing. They're a great organization. I can't say enough nice things about them, so please help me support their mission. So I'm so excited because, well, I'm excited for every show because we have a great show every week, but I'm so excited because we've not had this guest for a while on Connecting with Kim, and I'm so glad she's returning guest, and I won't hesitate to introduce you to her. She is Julianne Holt, who is our public defender for the 13th Judicial Circuit located here in Hillsborough County. Welcome back to Connecting with Kim.
Thank you very much, Kim. I love being around here and talking with you about all the things that I do and all the things that I see that you do.
Oh, I love that. And it's always a joy to be with you, Julianne. I've known you for many, many years, but it's just always a great time to sit down and talk to you. And I start off every show giving my guests an opportunity to share their life journey. And there are so many, as we talked about before we went on air, there are so many brand new people moving into Hillsborough County, into Tampa, who may, unbelievably, not know who Julianne Holt is and should know who she is, because this woman is a legend, absolute legend in Tampa and Hillsborough County, because you have won, I think, every single award that could possibly be given out.
I have definitely been honored and definitely have enjoyed my time serving as the public defender. As you know, I was raised here in Hillsborough County. I went to all the local public schools, graduated from Lato High School. We just had our 50th high school reunion.
I know, I heard.
Oof.
I saw it on Facebook.
Yeah, the picture really made me say, "Ooh, it's a good thing that I'm thinking about making some different changes in my life." But then I attended Hillsborough Community College. I went to the University of South Florida, go Bulls. And then I attended South Texas College of Law, and a lot of people say, well, why? E.J. Salsinas, who is someone that's very well respected and known here, was a state attorney here in Hillsborough County and then became a district court of appeals judge. He sat on the board of directors there and the board of trustees. So we had, a relationship with that particular school. And then more importantly, my mother's sister lived there, so I was able to live, as you can imagine, rent-free. Mm-hmm. And so all I had when I walked out of the school was just the loan that I had to get for the tuition. Everything else was covered by my family. And leaving home like that for 2.5 years was really great to be with family. Came back here, started my private practice, was having a great time doing a lot of court-appointed criminal defense work. Saw an opportunity and had heard a rumor that the person at the time that was the public defender was thinking of retiring, and so kind of piqued my interest. And ultimately I ran in 1992. Have had 8 elections, 4 contested, 4 uncontested, but it has definitely been the high point of my career. I would not change a thing in my life as it relates to what I've done from a professional standpoint whatsoever. It's truly been a wonderful journey.
Well, your journey, and it's a testament to you, because even though you had some contested elections, I would say in general, nobody in their right mind would ever have thought, since 1992, and I've known you since then, would have thought about running against Julianne Holt for public defender. Now, we will talk about this later in the show, because I know that you're planning on retiring now, and so we will all have to imagine a world where you are not the public defender. But in any case, we haven't sat down for a while, so let's talk about what's new, and I know you have some specific items you want to discuss in the public defender world, because I know you're involved in so many things.
A lot of the great things that have happened since we last chatted is there's been a true development of all our problem-solving courts here in Hillsborough County. We have Veterans Treatment Court that is nationwide respected, and it's the footprint for all treatment courts, in my opinion. And then we have a juvenile mental health court, first in this state, probably first in the nation. And of course that made a significant difference, because we're talking about our youth that have incompetency issues. That means they're not competent to handle the things in life, much less in the juvenile justice system. Mm-hmm. We have an adult drug court that is now under best practices. And we have an adult mental health court. all of these courts really changed how the system looked at individuals coming into the system. It's not talking about criminal laws, really. What it's talking about is the challenges that people have in life. How do we change the trajectory of their life? How do we improve the quality of their life? And frankly, how do we as a community accept and embrace and acknowledge a responsibility to try and give everyone an even playing field in their life? So, you know, we're talking about economy, we're talking about jobs, we're talking about, does everyone have a recreation center? Does everyone have services within their community? So for every zip code, do we have services? Because you can't expect someone who lives in Sun City to travel to South Tampa for services. Think about that. You make the journey a lot.
I make the journey a lot.
You make the journey a lot.
From South County to Tampa.
You know what you're talking
all the
about.
time. Yeah.
You're lucky because you have a car.
I am lucky.
And a lot of people don't have those luxuries. No. And as you know, we're challenged here with transportation issues. We have some infrastructure issues that we have to address. But those problem-solving courts have been tremendous. There's been a change in the death penalty law, where now you require unanimity for the jury as it relates to what their recommendation and really, frankly, what their sentence directive is to the court on how that particular individual should be treated that's charged with first-degree premeditated murder or felony murder. And then we have a new change in the juvenile area where you now have, and it's very much driven quite often really by just one or two jurisdictions that have certain problems, but it affects all of us. So there's a new juvenile detention law that allows the judge really unfettered discretion, for the most part, to keep a juvenile in a detention center for 21 days over and over and over again. The state has to seek the detention, but it really is something that really causes someone like myself, who's been doing this work for a long time, great pause, because it means that someone could actually be held. A young youth could be held in a detention center throughout the pendency of their charges, as well as during their sentencing phase. And think about this. As an adult, you're entitled to bail. You're entitled to be released from jail. And a youth instead is going to be held. That impacts, number one, think about this. Obviously, it's trauma. And, you know, everybody says, yeah, but didn't they commit a crime? Well, let's not forget we're presumed innocent. But it's a trauma to be held in that type of a facility. And number two, it does change the dynamics of the school education that you're receiving, because even though you do receive an education, you and I both know it's not an in-person, hands-on type of education as it would be in one of our public schools or charter schools. And then think about your contact with your family is limited. And if we had a juvenile detention center that was truly integrated with education, treatment, services, really on a day in and day out basis, you could say, okay, well, at least there might be some benefit, but we don't have that type of a setup in the system. So for me, it's one of those things, one of those laws that was passed, and they don't understand the unintended consequences that we'll face.
Well, you know, first of all, the problem-solving treatment courts, I think, are, you're right, they're a model for the entire nation. They're a model for Florida and the other counties, but they're a model for the nation. And what's beautiful about it, and you've been in this game a long time, is that it shows some evolution in our thinking of realizing that, you know, not all people are the same, not all situations are the same, not all, you know, are going to have the same outcome. We have to tailor. And I think it's a very, very good thing. I mean, those are amazing. I think they're steps in the right direction. This thing about the death penalty, I think, also is a step in the right direction. You know, it's one thing to say, I believe in the death penalty. Right. It's another thing to be on a jury and say, okay, I'm going to vote to give that person to take their life for their crime.
I literally have said that in 40 years of practicing in the criminal defense area, I have never criticized a jury's verdict whatsoever, because they're the individuals that come in, they swear under oath that they're going to set aside any preconceived notions that they have. They're going to listen to what's presented as facts by both sides, and those facts are well guided by a judge. And then at the end of the day, they're going to apply the law and they're going to render their decision. They don't come into this world of criminal justice or even civil justice and skewed in any fashion whatsoever. They haven't been doing juror work for 30 years so that you kind of, oh, is this the same story over and over again? They really do. it's really the most important part of our criminal justice and civil justice system. This jury system needs to be protected as much as our Constitution should be protected. And what I say to people all the time is, if you didn't watch the entire trial, if you didn't hear every piece of testimony, if you didn't see every piece of evidence, in my opinion, you need to be careful about criticizing those people who actually did do that, because you need to have faith in the jury system, and you also have to have courage to be a juror. And I don't ever want to do anything that would dissuade people from wanting to come to be jurors.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not, because you know you're guaranteed a jury by your peers in the Constitution. And I recently had, you know, the criminal defense attorneys had their conference here in Tampa, and I volunteered to participate in the mock jury trial. And I'm telling you, I was so grateful at the end of the day that I volunteered for that mission because it was an all-day, but it was an extremely interesting, it was based on a real case that's really being adjudicated right now. And we were 6 jurors selected out of, I forget how many people, 14, 15. And we were 6 jurors selected. And I can tell you that it was eye-opening serving on that mock jury trial for somebody for a felony offense. And you can't, I don't think you can have enough interaction with the criminal justice system in order to understand how it actually works. You know,
and you're doing something like that, really, as you said, it's eye-opening, and you get a true appreciation of what everybody's role is, and you really also carry a tremendous burden about you as the juror and what you're about to do. So imagine if it's a real life scenario that you know that your decision has long-term impacts on people's lives. And a lot of times people feel like, you know, there's not sympathy for a victim, or that there's, you know, that we've become more anti-law enforcement. And the reality of it is that's not at all the case. You can truly have sympathy for a victim. You can have empathy for a victim. You can actually believe a lot of the testimony that you hear. But if you have that reasonable doubt because of something that you've heard, a conflict in the evidence, a lack of evidence, anything like that, the law is very clear on what you need to do. And so, you know, I don't think people realize that great burden that a juror really carries with them. And you can't ever change your mind. You know, a lot of things in life that we do, buy a car, we can sell it and get another one. Buy a house. Frankly, if you get married and you don't want to be married, a lot of the things that we do in life, we can change our mind. As a juror, you cannot change your mind just because you go home and think, wow, you know what, I should have thought about this and this and this.
And the dynamics, the reason that they had this mock trial, that we were all there, was so that they could understand, because they were filming us and we were on camera and audio, and they wanted to see what are the dynamics that go on in the jury room. And it was shocking to me, because we walked in there and all 5 of them were not guilty, and I was like, yeah, I'm a guilty vote right now, you know, based on the evidence presented. So the dynamics that happened after that were very interesting, and that's what they were trying to, that whole group of criminal defense lawyers were trying to understand, what goes on in the jury room, because that's the part they don't ever get to see.
And, you know, and as a lawyer, what I've learned, and I've learned it, you know, here I am 40-something years later, I'm still learning. It's really important for you to not just tell a juror, hey, you get to make your own decision, and you don't have to change your mind if you don't want to. But the thing that you really have to do is say to someone, I want to know if you have that fortitude to stick to your convictions, even if everyone else is telling you to not stick to those convictions. Because, again, not only is it a burden, but you have to have a courage to walk out in front of everybody later and say, here's what my decision is, here's where we are. And there's this thing called an Allen charge.
Yeah.
Which if if it's a hung jury, you know, they're basically saying, you know, we've put a lot of time and effort and money into this, and you've heard everything there is to hear. Are you sure you can't make a decision? And a lot of times I'm concerned with the Allen charge that people will say, okay, I guess I have to change my mind, or somebody has to change the mind. And if you're in the minority, and I mean a real minority.
Oh, I was like definitely in the minority.
Right. If it's a 5-1, imagine how you're sitting there and everybody's looking at you.
Oh, they were ganging up on me. There's no question about it. I mean, they were looking at me like, well, if you're just joining us right now, my guest in the chair is Julianne Holt, who is the public defender for the 13th Judicial Circuit here in Hillsborough County. And she has been there since 1992, and she's just a joy to be with. But you were right. The minute I said, we went around the room quick, and the minute I said guilty, they all looked at me like I had 2 heads. And they were like, you know, everyone was like, what do you mean? You know, what are you basing that on? And yeah, so some very lively discussion ensued after that.
And it's good to know, though, that you can have that discussion. And I think our judges do a really good job of saying to everybody, be mindful, be respectful. And there's, you know, usually you have bailiffs that are around and they can hear what's going on. So I'm very hopeful that, but I think it's a great system and I think it works well.
Well, I told them after that day, I said, anytime you need me to volunteer for this, I'm your girl.
I like that. See? I like that. There you go.
Because I've never actually had the opportunity to serve on a jury. I was called for jury duty recently in Hillsborough County, and I reported. It happened to be the timing was awkward for me because I was in the midst of moving my mother to independent living, and I said to the wonderful folks that process the jurors at the courthouse, I said, I would love to serve. I have no issue with serving, but this is really a tough time for me. And when I explained what was going on, they were like, it's okay, you're excused.
Right.
But I hope I actually do get the opportunity, because I think it's your constitutional duty, it's a sacred duty, and it's something that makes our system work. You know, there are a lot of people in the rest of the world, they don't get that.
And
they don't have that opportunity.
And a lot of the judges give you an ability to provide input, not only to how the court treated you and how you felt, but how did the lawyers do? How did they perform? What did you think? And that input is really tremendous, because if you hear from 10 or 11 jurors, hey, you were way too aggressive, well, then you have to say, hey, let me think about whether I should change some things. Or if a juror says, you didn't seem very prepared, you know, it makes you go back and reflect. So I always think getting some input back from the jurors is a really interesting thing. Some people don't like to get it, but for me, I've always been the same. Judge, give me any hints that you can give me. What can I improve upon? What do you think I did good? What do you think I need to work on more? And I feel the same way about jurors. So I'm hopeful that jurors will take those opportunities to respond to the judges when they ask them for the input.
I hope so too, because you know, I had the opportunity, we all did, that served, had the opportunity to give feedback to the room at large after we were done. And I think they appreciated that, because a lot of people came up to me afterwards and had parking lot discussions about, you know, and, you know, lobby discussions about what went on. But it was an invaluable experience. And of course, one other thing that I'd done, which you and I shared, was serving on Andrew Warren's Community Advisory Council, and I can't tell you what a great experience that has been too, because again, engaging with the court system, and particularly from the criminal side of things, it's eye-opening. Until you go and you look and you participate and you learn, you don't know.
You know, and I think you bring up a really great, valid point. When Cindy Stewart was running for the clerk of court, you know, I told her, I said, you know, one of the things you should do, take advantage of now, is educate people on everything that the clerk's office does, because people don't really realize.
No, they don't know.
As you know, we had a press conference earlier this week, and it's just one little thing, you know, but it's the injunctions that come in domestic-related cases, and she's actually sought out legislation to try and improve the system, improve efficiencies, improve the manner in which things are done. And I said, you know, if you go out and you talk to the community and say, hey, my office is who takes care of injunctions, you'd have somebody that says, can I talk to you about that? How come I have to fill out 450 pages of documents just to do this and this and this? Or, you know, why couldn't I just do that online? Or why did I have to wait in court for 2 or 3 hours? Little things like that help us improve the system. So I think that anytime that we have the opportunity, and the advisory council you're talking about, I know you learned about the different parts of the state attorney's office. I know you learned about the different programs of the state attorney's office. And I know that another thing is you get to network with a lot of different people who also bring other perspectives. So it's really a wonderful opportunity. And I tell people all the time, that's why I love going out into the community and speaking to people, just to talk to them about what our office does. Because it's not just going into court and you're not Perry Mason.
No,
you're not Perry Mason,
and you're not Law and Order.
you're
not Jack on Law and Order.
right. And so I'm sitting here thinking, you know, and you tell them everything that you do, and when I tell them the things that I do, which takes me anywhere from Tallahassee to anywhere in the country where we may have to go observe other courts to see if we want to adapt to those courts or adopt that mechanism in some way, you know, it's people just don't have any concept of that. People didn't know that this was an elected office when I ran in 1992, because there had never been an election. And so can you imagine
Yeah, and
You know?
and I know they don't. I mean, that's, we had Cindy Clark on Cindy Stewart on Connecting with Kim not too long ago, just so people to understand. She handles one of the most important offices in all of Hillsborough County, from a sheer data amount, sheer data point.
Right.
But you should also share that with people. Give them a little rundown of of your duties and because you employ 200 people. It's like a large law firm.
Yeah, $19.5 million. And when you think, a lot of people don't realize that we actually even have court every single day of the year. The only time we get a break is if there's a hurricane. So we're always saying, please don't bring a hurricane, believe it or not. A lot of people say, oh, we could get a couple of days off from work. No, because we have to work every single day. And, and a lot of times people also don't realize, we're in traffic court, we're in juvenile court, we're in misdemeanor court, but we do most of the death penalty work in this community. We do most of the homicide work in this community. But more importantly, we've actually earned over the last 30 years the opportunity to have a seat at the table whenever important community issues are being discussed, which means that our office actually gets to be a change agent if they want to be.
Exactly.
If you
like
wanna
this
be-
week.
right.
Like this week.
If we want to be a change agent, this is what we can do.
Yeah.
So I've always said it was a lot more than always just being, the statute says we get appointed if someone's been arrested for a crime or a Baker Act proceeding. We represent that individual, and then life goes on. Well, you're counting cases. You're not really looking at people. You're not looking at how their life's being impacted, and how we handle our case impacts witnesses, impacts victims, impacts the judiciary, impacts the state, impacts providers. And so our role really is critical and crucial, and it's important that people understand not only what we do, but why we do what we do. I've had some folks sometimes, say, well, it's like you're an obstructionist. You don't want to, and I said, no. See, there's this constitutional right to remain silent. So when somebody asks a question that my client should not answer, it is my job, it's my duty, my responsibility, my obligation to say, you have a right to remain silent. And a lot of times people forget those things. And to me, the Constitution can never, ever be marginalized, diminished in any way, and its intent should never be compromised for any set of circumstances.
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you, I know you know this too. There's the perspective of when you're not engaged in the system, and then unfortunately, if you have an opportunity where you are engaged in the system, you start to appreciate those constitutional rights real quick, right?
Oh.
And you start to understand your protections that are built in there when you're involved in a situation.
In private practice, I tell people the story because a lot of times people, seem to think that I was only a public defender. But in private practice, I actually represented a vice president of a bank at one point in time in my career on a really serious charge, which cost him his job. He was in jail for a period of time because he could not, as losing the job, he could not afford the bond. At the end of the day, 9 months later, he was not found not guilty. The state of Florida null pros. They could not move forward on his case because they did not have sufficient evidence to move forward for 9 months.
Good Lord. And
the charge was significant. It involved a child. So you can imagine that aspect. For 9 months, he had to live with that hanging over his head. And even when you walk out of the courtroom, whether it's a not guilty or a null pros or a dismissal,
your life's never the same.
It's never the same. People don't look at you the same, and it's hard to overcome. And so I always say to people, it's really easy to say, you should do this or you should do this, but if you're ever the person that's in that position, and you have to know that your lawyer believes in you, you have to know that your lawyer's not coming up to you and saying, this is a horrible case, they're offering you probation, are you sure you don't want that? That's not how our role should be. And so I'm hoping that I leave a good footprint in this office. I hope I leave a good footprint for the holistic approach of the practice of law, the holistic approach with our problem-solving courts. I'm hopeful that people will continue to see the Public Defender's Office as a leader in the areas that matter, and I think I've worked real hard to try and do that, try to be a leader as a change agent, and I think it's worked out in some areas. We start out with 10 to 12,000 juvenile cases in 1993. We're down to about 3,000 now. That's a big change. We have really worked hard to make sure that our problem-solving courts are not just created, but they have best practices so that we can get nationwide recognition and we can be certified if need be. And those things are important to this community. But I've been very fortunate. I've served with tremendous chief judges, tremendous colleagues, had the tremendous support of the Board of County Commission my entire career, and City Council, and you know, have really had some good friends on both sides of the aisle.
You are universally loved on both sides of the aisle, Julianne. I can tell you that for sure. So we're down to the last couple of minutes. I know it goes fast.
Yeah.
So you're retiring. So tell me, what are you going to be doing?
So I'm going to travel a little bit because I do want to see a couple of parts of our world that I haven't seen. But I intend to stay extremely active both in politics and in the practice of law. I am not walking away into the sunset. I really have some more things that I'd like to achieve in my life. But I think this is the right time for a new change in leadership. For the Public Defender's Office. I think I have achieved, I only have 2 goals left to achieve, and they are in the works. Not that I couldn't set some more, as you know, Kim, because you know I'm very capable of doing that. But But at the end of the day, I think I will have served this community hopefully well, and I will leave a footprint that I think will help the next person. And as you know, I've already tried to work hard on a successor. And he's worked real hard side by side with me for a long time now. He's been earning every single nickel of that paycheck for the last 16 years.
Well, Julianne, there's no question that you've left a footprint on this community. The honors that you have received reflect that. You will be, I predict, in demand by everyone, because now they'll say, oh, she's got some free time. So, you know, let's recruit her for this and let's recruit her for that. So, you know, after you get done traveling, you'll have no lack of things to do. I'm absolutely positive about that. But we want to thank you for your service to this community. I personally want to thank you. I know the county and all the residents and taxpayers of Hillsborough County want to thank you. And of course, we wish nothing but the best for you and are so happy for you to start a new chapter of your life.
Thank you very much.
So thank you for being my guest on Connecting with Kim today. It was a real honor to have you. It always is. I love talking to you. She's going to be starting a new chapter in her life. We wish her well. And we want, again, to thank you. I want to thank my sponsor, the Spring of Tampa Bay. And Julianne is just one of the reasons why living in our little corner of paradise is paradise. So come back next week when we'll have another edition of Connecting with Kim. Thank you so much.